of all the games that I've reviewed so far, Stealth ATF is the one that I feel least qualified to talk about. I don't know anything about flying, I don't know anything about flying games, and until I had to do this review, I barely played this at all. I don't even know what ATF stands for. Still, that was the point of this whole thing, to dive into new experiences, so I'm ready to give this a go.
Of course, I can't dive right into it. Like a lot of these toaster oven NESs, it takes a bit of jiggery-pokery to get mine going. Now, Stealth ATF was published by Activision, which is enough to assure me that this game is, at least, worth trying. I never used to care much for them as a developer, but they soon won my respect once I discovered their superb lineup of Atari 2600 titles. And Stealth ATF was not made far off from those days of glory. In fact, its director is Gary Kitchen, whom I recognise as the designer of one of my all-time favourite 2600 games. Could this game be just as good? Let's see. When starting to play this game, it immediately comes to mind that the Nintendo Entertainment System is hardly the happiest home for a game that requires a 3D environment. To be brutally honest, the NES can struggle to draw 2D games. The developers of this game do a very respectable job of emulating a pilot's perspective, with the use of a horizon line and ground detail. But the gameplay unavoidably suffers from the NES's limitations. Sure, the ground detail does a sound job of indicating depth and viewing angle, even giving me vertigo during a somersault, but in the end it's only so much pixelated noise. Without landmarks to judge your position, there's no readily apparent way to tell if your plane is rolled to one side and moving forward, or banking and turning around. But the biggest problem comes as you maneuver around your opponents. The NES is not able to independently scale or rotate a sprite, meaning a new sprite has to be hand-drawn for each different angle and position of an enemy aircraft. Inevitably, there will be noticeable jumps as they transition between the discrete number of sprites available. Compounding this issue is that the NES does not like big moving sprites, so there's a strict limit on how big the enemies can be drawn, and this prevents you from getting a real sense of an enemy's approach. They can be right in your face and still look like they're miles away. As you can see, all of this makes it really tough to keep them in your sights and to avoid their fire. It's very tempting, in the safety of hindsight, to say that the technology just wasn't there yet, that attempting to produce flight simulation games before 3D environments was a pointless fool's errand. But think back to the 80s, when gamers were lining up for the chance to enter a virtual cockpit. Why should they have to wait for technology to appease our modern gaming standards, when even they will be outdated one day? Not to mention that developers like this, experimenting and exploring the very limits of early technology, are responsible for the evolution of gaming as an industry. What is innovation if it isn't getting it wrong today, so that someone else can get it right tomorrow? I think I can finally see the purpose of these early flying games. They're pioneering in every sense of the word, but they're still pretty hard to play. At least Stealth ATF keeps its gameplay simple and satisfying. To take the bogies down, you can use a machine gun, or shoot a missile if you can lock them on. Ha! Scratch one bogey. Oh, there's one other thing you can do. This ATF is a stealth ATF after all, so you also have a stealth mode you can activate once a mission, which jams your opponent's radars. Probably. It's kind of hard to tell. Let's talk about the radar. As you can't see distant enemies in your perspective view, the radar is your only hope to track them down. But it doesn't make it easy, with enemy dots jumping around all over the place. Now, I've already explained why the enemy planes have to jump around in your sights, so that's no problem. But why can't a radar dot move continuously? It's as if, instead of changing the plane's sprite to represent its position, they change its position to fit its representation. Not that it matters much anyway. By the time you turn around to face a dot on your radar, they're already too close to hit. The best strategy I found was to just fly straight, and wait for them to circumnavigate the globe and come out in front of you. It's slow, but it gets the job done. If you're fast in dispatching your opponents, you enter a bonus phase, which rewards you by replenishing your enemies and finally changing that music. Well, slightly changing the music, but any change from those 2 4-second jingles is reward enough. If you pause once, it toggles the music off, but it replaces it with this. Gee, thanks. Now, as I've said, I don't really play flying games, so there's only one contemporary of this game that I have to compare it to, Ultimate Air Combat, also by Activision, but released 2 years later and with a different development team. And it's a big improvement. Not just in terms of presentation, but also in the smoothness of play and the fun factor, especially as there's different mission styles and that taking off and landing are completely automatic. Yeah, this is probably the first thing I should have mentioned. Stealth ATF has you manually taking off and landing. Taking off is no problem, but as for landing, I just can't do it. I know it doesn't look that hard, but the controls are really touchy. Your speed drains very quickly, and your apparent angle gets locked between sprites. Not that I have any idea what speed or angle to come in at. There's no on-screen instruction telling you to speed up or lift your nose, and even if you land, the game gives you no feedback about where you went wrong. How am I meant to land this thing? There are these meters down the bottom of your screen, but look at them. Could they possibly be any smaller or more indistinct? If I'm sitting back on my couch, I need a pair of binoculars to be able to read them. And where should each meter be when I land? In desperation, I tracked down the manual on the internet, and you know what it says? Quote, "You must learn the correct speed and angle of attack to make a safe landing." What? That's it? So it comes down to trial and error, which wouldn't be such a bad thing if I could just have a few consecutive goes at it. But every time you crash, you have to start the whole mission over again. And after I've been flying for 5 minutes, I can't remember what my fingers did last time, so I just end up crashing and crashing and crashing. Dang.
Now, I know I didn't do a very comprehensive review of this game, assuming there's more than one mission in it, but really, I'm not here to do an objective review. I'm just here to describe my encounter with the game. And this time, my encounter's ending prematurely, because frankly, I'm just fed up with it.